Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Vanessa Russell with us today. She's founder and executive director at Love Never Fails. Love Never Fails is committed to the restoration, education, and protection of young people who are at risk of or currently being sexually exploited in California. So very interesting organization and a very fun conversation that we're going to have today about that because it's definitely not a common topic on this podcast. This pod is presented to you by podpire.com. That is my company. If you want help to start your own podcast, meet cool people, monetize your pod, get sponsors, and get AdSense money from that, you can go to podpire.com. Vanessa, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Charles, for having me. Let's see, what am I up to? Well, a whole lot. So we are busy just addressing this issue of human trafficking, which sadly is very common in the San Francisco Bay Area, where we have most of our offices in the 9 counties here, and then we are working toward educating hundreds of students nationwide using our IT Biz Tech Academy, which is sort of that's the integration point here with this today's topic is really around how to help vulnerable populations with training, with education, and help them to get into economically sustainable jobs in order to avoid things like human trafficking. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. A bunch of other stuff. Got kids in high school, and all that good stuff. My husband's traveling this week. It's always fun in the Russell household.
Lots of movement. First, why the name Love Never Fails?
Yeah. So, I'm a person of faith, and people tend to think that it's just right there coming from the Bible. But what really happened for me was I was teaching inner city kids dance for many years. In 2010, one of my 14 at the time, 14-year-old dance students stopped coming to class. And I thought she had just lost interest. And I later found out that a few months later, she was brought to me. Someone brought her to me, not knowing she was my student, and said, I think you can help her. And she was in the car, and I walked over to the car, and I'm like, whoa, it's my student. And I spoke to her, and she said she had been, as this trigger warning, some of the things I talk about are upsetting, but, she had been raped. She had been shot at and choked, and all these horrible things had happened to her, and that she was being trafficked. And that was heartbreaking for me. And, I was working in high tech at that time, and I didn't have a background in education or in mental health and I remember thinking, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to help her. And I remember that I was praying and just asking, for like, send me a sign, tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. And that's when I got this sense, just love her, and you'll know what to do from there. And so it's that kind of love that will not fail. It's not a love that knows everything, that's perfect. It's just a love that is present, is committed, and is bullish about protecting vulnerable people.
Yeah, I love that. My first interpretation of Love Never Fails, that the name was like a lot of these people that do trafficking, they fake love so that they can sexually exploit, right? And
Ah,
real love never fails. It's
that's
like,
right.
that's not love, right? Tell us about how it happens usually. Is this what happened in the case of that 14-year
That's
old,
right.
like naive love and some guy trying to exploit that?
That's what it was. We call it Romeo pimping. And what it is coercion. And that's one of the three ways that people are trafficked, either through force, fraud, or coercion. And that, by the way, is the most common way, is that someone presents themselves as a love interest, and then they productize the relationship. And oftentimes now in this day and age, they say, oh, we're swingers, or we invite people into the bedroom with us, or we do non-standard things, and they characterize it this way, to normalize it or to make it easier for our youth to accept. Or sometimes the angle is, if you don't help me earn this money, I'm going to have to leave, and we won't be able to be together. I'll have to move to another area. All of these things under a coercive umbrella to make people think that they have to do this, or else the person that they love and that loves them so much will no longer be able to continue in relationship with them. So that's what happened to her.
Right. And that's terrible. I have a wife, and if I would ask her to do that, she would immediately leave me. Why would people stay in these relationships? I understand the age factor, but
Mhm.
isn't this causing such an amount of stress that they eventually go? Is the manipulator that good and that scary that they never leave?
Yes. So, I mean, think about your wife as a formidable teenager. I mean, this was a 14-year-old. Our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until we're 25. And so you have people that maybe have never been told they're beautiful. They've never been told, that never experienced romantic feelings. The way that they do it is there's a whole strategy where first they, engage in sexual connection with that person one on one to get them attached and get them feeling like this is my boyfriend. I can't do anything. I can't live without them. And then from there, then it's how heavily can I coerce this person to do what I need? And then if they don't comply, then it becomes violent. Then you're getting hit. Then you're being threatened that, oh, I know where your parents live. I know where your siblings live. You can't return home. You're protecting your mom. If you don't do this, I'm going to hurt mom. So there's a lot of tactics that are utilized. And a lot of it has to do with the studying of the victim, the strategy. If you know anything about sales, if you know anything about motivational interviewing, I could find out by asking you maybe 5 or 10 questions what makes you tick. And then
Yep.
I use those 5 or 10 answers to control you so that you will do what I say. And the only times that we see people getting away are when they've had enough, or they've been, almost near death. And sometimes they don't even leave then. So had enough, almost near death. Or sometimes there's a strong anchor of a relationship with somebody that is able to pull them out before they get to be too far gone.
Right. And what does Love Never Fails LNF does to fix this problem? Do you leverage technology? What's your strategy?
It's multifaceted. Well, firstly, we have 8 homes. So we provide safe houses for people to get out at a moment's notice. So when there's that compelling event, maybe you got beat up, maybe many of the people that are being sold, they're experiencing a lot of violence at the hands of a buyer, or in the streets, or being beaten up by other girls that are out there that are jealous, different things like that. So we'll usually get a call. It'll be from law enforcement. It'll be from churches. It'll be from community members, concerned neighbors. We had a young man who was driving by. A 14-year-old flagged him down. She was trying to solicit him. He got her in his car. He drove her to the police station. The police called us up and said, we have a 14-year-old. She's from LA. Can you come and pick her up? We picked her up. We cared for her for 3 days in one of our homes, and then we brought her back to her mom. These scenarios are happening all the time, but we don't just stop there. It's not, housing is not enough, because once you get somebody in the housing, you need to work on their mental health restoration. You need to work on their emotional, their mental, their spiritual. All that needs to be restored. Then after that is stabilized, then we can talk to them about jobs, because they often have vulnerability, workforce development vulnerabilities, or career vulnerabilities, educational vulnerabilities. And so we have an IT Biz Tech Academy where we help people become engineers or project managers or sales reps or entrepreneurs or customer service reps, those 5 pathways. And the idea then is that they would go and get a job making, $23 or $25 an hour, so that they are economically independent and no longer dependent on, families or abusive families or friends or partners.
Right. And also, what about stopping the criminals that do that, the pimps, quote unquote? Because even in rap culture, like pimping is quite the common topic, and it's normalized. You know, it's cool to be a pimp. You're rich. You have the women and so forth. So, how do you stop the crime committers themselves?
Yeah. Well, and that I think is the biggest challenge. We certainly, our focus is the survivors, getting them out of these dangerous situations. But we also are heavily advocating for bills like AB 379, which was just introduced, that will criminalize loitering for the purpose of prostitution. I don't know if you know this, but it was decriminalized in California in January of 2022. And when loitering for the purpose of prostitution was decriminalized, it actually exploded the streets where people are being sold. So in Oakland, in Stockton, in Sacramento, in San Francisco, where we might have seen maybe 10 or 20 people being sold out there was 60 or so, people being sold in the open market in the middle of the day, in front of churches, in front of schools, nude, high heels, middle of the day, people not sleeping, not resting, not getting any food, and being basically, being treated like chattel out in the middle of the street. And this was characterized as a Safer Streets for All Act. I could not believe it. So Assemblymember Maggie Krell has taken a stance on this with AB 379, and we are a co-sponsor of that bill. Love Never Fails is. And so these are some of the ways that we are hoping to hold people accountable to not purchasing children. Don't purchase adults. Go get mental health services. Go work on whatever's missing inside. I don't, I know that there's something happening with people, why they do this, why they buy sex. If you watch there's a great movie called Buying Her that Exodus Cry has put on. There's a bunch of sex buyers, and they talk about why they did it. And they talk about what drove them. Oftentimes starts with pornography. Pornography is no longer enough. So then they start buying sex whenever they go on business trips. And then it's once a week, and then it's once a day, and then it's multiple times a day. And even one person said he graduated to attempted rape. These are the things when you get that insatiable addiction where you don't see the person on the other end of the equation as a person, is why we're seeing so much of this.
Right. And is porn mostly good, or is it a bad thing? Certainly a money behemoth for these companies, but is it good for society in the end?
Well, I mean, obviously, I would say no. I will tell you that there's been a ton of research that's done that shows that porn rewires the brain, such that couples can't even get sexually aroused by each other because they are, you're not, making noises the way they do on porn. You don't look the way you do on porn. You don't, you're not doing everything I say. You're not taking care of all of my fetishes. So, now I don't even want to be with my spouse, and nothing will satisfy. And so that's what gives birth to sex buying, because in sex buying, you get to say, I want it like this many times. I'm going to give you this much money. You control every factor, but that is not true relationship. It's not intimacy. It's not, it's certainly satisfying a physical need, perhaps, but the sheer fact that you need it more and more and more is a strong indicator, and it destroys your family. It destroys other people's family. It's a strong indicator that someone should reflect on that. Is this really good for me? Has this really served me well? Or are there other things that I should go work on that make me a better man or better woman, better person, and that deal with the deep hurt and pain that I'm experiencing, or the stress? Maybe your job is too stressful. Maybe you need more self-care. This is the worst way to go and get that care, because you're harming another individual, especially most likely a child, or if it's an adult, it's an adult that has been through a life of trauma. I used to say to my teenage son when he would tell me that, a girl was kind of throwing herself at him, I would say, son, are you going to take advantage of that opportunity? Or are you going to speak to that young lady and say, you know what, you're beautiful and you're worth so much more? And he says, well, why do you say that, Mom? I said, you know why? Because that girl is probably throwing it at you because she was either molested or she was told that she wasn't worth any more than that. And are you going to take advantage of her? Or are you going to speak good things over her? Are you going to tell her how valuable she is? And he goes, man, you ruined, I had an opportunity and now I can't even, take advantage. Yeah, I ruined your life. Good. Because I want you to see the deeper value in the people that you're engaging with.
Yeah, and the very Silicon-ish Valley word that I would use for that is scaled. It's being happier on a daily basis rather than going through the extremes and not feeling fulfilled. So many questions there because I could put myself in your son's shoes, and yes, pornography was giving me such a bias back then that yeah, I would do anything just to be with a girl, right? So I think that's the. And by the way, I'm from Montreal, right? Like the HQ of Pornhub,
Mhm.
which very much justifies that. Thinking back about it now, um, I think society would be better without porn. But I think there's also so many ills in society that justifies why people go into porn. For example, back then I didn't do better. I was sort of in a prison, right, in the educational system. That
Mhm.
wasn't made for me. I should have been given the opportunity to start a business, which is why I'm starting a school for young children to become entrepreneurs. Right, that's my chip on my shoulder. Is there a case in which prostitution, legal prostitution, can be a good product for the person giving it and for the person receiving it? Can there be a scenario? And if so, is that like a minority of scenarios, or is it like 90% is dysfunctional and 10% is sort of healthy?
Yeah. So on a spiritual note, right? So I have my convictions. I would say, no, it's probably never going to be, it's never going to work out. But let's just think about societally speaking, taking that lens. Actually, one of our team members met a woman who was a medical doctor. And she decided that, you know what, I want to be a sex worker instead of being a medical doctor. And I thought, okay, that is
Quite
her.
the career shift.
Yeah, it was a career shift. And she just loved, she felt liberated sexually. She was doing this in the comfort of her home. She had a beautiful home, obviously, as an MD. It wasn't unsafe. She got to set the terms of when people would come and go, and what she would be willing to do and not do. And I thought, if there was ever a use case for sex work that is voluntary and, seemingly a choice, that would be it, because she has another alternative. Unfortunately, the majority of the people that are being trafficked or that identify as liberated sex workers, when you peel into their homes, like I asked the president of the sex workers union in San Francisco, I said, how many of your participants in your union were trafficked as children? She said 100%. So
Whoa.
so, based on that, if your entrance into this industry was at a time when your brain was not fully developed and you didn't have any other opportunities to make money, is it really a choice? Have you really chosen that? And then once you get settled into it, maybe you have your regulars. I talk to some of the girls all the time. I support people who identify as sex workers now, and they'll say, I have my 5 guys and they pay my rent and I see them once a month, and it's all organized very carefully and they're safe. And I say to them, well, I wish you would explore this or that. One of them wants to be a writer, different things. I wish you would explore some of your other talents, but I'm glad you're safe. But the truth of the matter is, I can tell you that one person was beaten. She was pistol whipped. Many things happened to her that led to this current stability. And my question is, do we want to decriminalize an industry that does that to people on their pathway to a promotion where they get to be a safe sex worker? Do we want to and are we living in a society when we have 180,000 unhoused people in California? Is it responsible to decriminalize an industry that preys upon vulnerable people like the unhoused, like the abused, like the drug addicted? When we have an epidemic with fentanyl, with opioids, when we have mental health at its all-time high because we're coming out of COVID, are these the environments and the circumstances that you should release an industry that where you literally could pay your dues with your life? So these are things that keep me up at night as we contemplate this notion of a safe sex worker that is empowered, that is living their best life. I will tell you that those that say that, most of them had to go through quite years and years of abuse before they arrived at that place.
Right. The thing is, the nature of sending or giving someone money for the exchange of sex is sort of dangerous, because once you give someone money, it's like, okay, now do whatever I want,
Do
right?
whatever you want. Yep.
And us men were stronger, right? So if they don't comply, then it's like physical force, and that breeds trauma. So that's a very tricky one. That it's a dangerous job. Put it that way, like it's a statistically speaking, they will be raped, and at some point. I'm not sure what are the statistics on that. I'm not sure if you have these, but
Yeah.
what is your take? What is the statistics? Do you have them?
Yeah, 76% of those that are trafficked will be raped at least one time. They will
In their
be
full career or per year?
in their full career, and it's usually multiple times. I think it was the study I saw was up to 5 times.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
some people even think, oh, you're a prostitute, so you can't be raped. Well, yes, you can. You haven't agreed to sex. Someone gets out of the car, they pull you off to the side and rape you, and they don't pay you. That's not consensual. And then, of course, if you're a minor, it's never consensual.
Right. And then what do you think about the evolution of porn into like OnlyFans? What do you think about that
Mhm.
app?
Yeah. So very problematic, just like Pornhub, right? There were on Pornhub and now on OnlyFans, there are hundreds of cases. I want to say on Pornhub, there were 116 proven cases of rape where people were actually viewing a rape and paying to watch it. And Pornhub had to take those down. I'm thinking of one woman, Rose Kalimba, who was 14 years old. She was raped, and uh, and her rape was watched by 400,000 people, and they refused to take it down until she threatened legal action. Same thing is happening with OnlyFans. There's menage a trois happening there. There's children that are being shown there, that are part of subscription. There's various fetishes. Oh, people want to look at feet. People want to look at bestiality. People want to look at different scenarios. And again, all of this is terribly harmful to your soul, to your spirit, to your mind. In fact, one survivor did a report, and she's transgender. Esperanza is her name, and she did a report, and she talked about how detrimental it was to her mental health. That all that anybody wanted to see of her was a fetish. She was a fetish. She wasn't a real person. She wasn't valued for who she was, for her personality, for her beautiful coat, or like some shoes that she picked out that people thought were really nice. No, she was a freak that was being purchased because she was non-standard in the world. And that really hurt my feelings to hear, people kind of thinking of themselves in that way, as if, your value comes from your feet, or from, whatever kinky thing you're willing to do, instead of like your intrinsic value and you having the opportunity to make money by being you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the start of love, right? When we love someone initially and it's our first love, it's projections, it's what we want them to be. As humans, we're pretty much that way. Then once we mature, we discover what true love is, right? Which is growing with someone, accepting who they are and adapting to that. Um, Yesterday, as I opened my X, I saw an ad of a midget with big tits. It said that's
Yeah,
literally what it says. Like I'm in
yeah.
Mexico is like a midget tetas or whatever. It was so dumb. And I'm like, is X right now another platform, another extension for porn? Their recent Elon, since he took in, he's fired like the full evaluating team, right? That is
Mm.
evaluating the content for good and not. Have you seen like an extension of Twitter as a porn platform as of late?
No, not as of late, but I will say all of them are having the same problem. All of them. I've done searches on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, all the platforms, TikTok, and there are pornographic content in every single one of the platforms. And the truth of the matter is, you think about, I'm going to be a little political, but like, look at the amazing level of detail that Doge is able to utilize to look at American finance. I wonder if we took that power and we pointed it at these platforms and said we didn't want to do any more child trafficking. I wonder if we would be actually really successful at rooting out who's doing this stuff, who's posting these children, who's selling them. I bet you we could. I bet you we would find everybody we want to find in days, hours even. So the fact that we are just so confused about how to manage this on these social media platforms, but we can comb through hundreds of years of financial records for an entire country and find minuscule details in minutes and weeks and days and fire people because we don't think that those are appropriate. But yet we keep these engines of sexual exploitation running with no care for the parents, the families, the children that are being so deeply brutalized. Think about that.
Right. Yeah, it's true. How do you fix a pimp, someone that has been doing that for years? Can these people be rehabilitated? And what's their demographics, psychographics profile? Did they grow up without a father? Did they too grow up in poverty? What's the root cause here?
Yeah, well, the DePaul School of Law did a research project with exploiters, and they it was a small population, so I can't say it's evidence based per se, but it just gave us some insight. Upwards of, I want to say 78% or maybe 82% of those that were exploiters had witnessed domestic violence in their lifetime, had come from a large portion of them had gone through poverty, and many exploiters have experienced sexual abuse themselves. And what we find is that the same reasons that oftentimes the victims are exploited are oftentimes the same reasons that exploiters become exploiters, out of vulnerability, out of poverty. And so what I try to do, one of my missions as well, is to protect, because it's majority is boys of color, that are the ones that are being arrested for pimping and pandering. And so my goal is to get those young men early. I want to interrupt that way of they may have been corrupted by a family member or by a community member. They may be angry that they were molested and nobody cared that they were molested, and so they've become sexually angry and rageful. And I would love to interrupt that by giving them an opportunity to get trained for an economically sustainable job, by offering them counseling, by offering them, we have a 12-step recovery that's called a 12-step recovery book for men called Fight for Love, offering them, and it's also for women. We have another one for women, but, offering them alternatives to this is their only means to make money, because the bottom line is they're either going to go to jail or they're going to go to the grave. The streets do not lose. So before you know it, something bad will happen to them as well. In one exploiter's lifetime, they will exploit between 2 and 31 people. And so when you redirect their life, you redirect 30 plus victims. And so I truly believe in the, holistically diverting people. And I have a bias that usually who I'm looking for are the young people that are impacted. But I've seen older exploiters and older. I've talked to men that have been sex buyers as well, older, and they've turned around. They've experienced. They've said they repent from that. They feel sad about it. They have remorse, and I tend to accept people at their word, and the way in which they serve and give back as a result.
Vanessa, thank you for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you?
So you can find out by going to loveneverfailsus.com, our website there, and also our social media handles, Love Never Fails 5 on Twitter, Love Never Fails Us on Instagram, and Love Never Fails fan page on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn as well.